While we are gathering in this Holy Week to celebrate the events of Jesus' Passion, our brothers and sisters, fellow children of Abraham, have been gathering to celebrate Pesach, the Hebrew word that means lamb, very much like the Spanish word for lamb. A recollection of a time back in the days of Israel when they were captives in Egypt, and it was the blood of a lamb that saved them as God sent an angel of death through the Egyptian cities and towns. Our first lesson this evening tells us about that incident. It's recorded in the 12th chapter of the book of Exodus. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, "This month is to be for you the first month of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. If any household is too small for a whole lamb, they must share one with their nearest neighbor, having taken into account the number of people there are. You are to determine the amount of lamb needed in accordance with what each person will eat. This is how you are to eat it, with your cloak tucked into your belt, and your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. On that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn, both men and animals. And I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. This is a day you are to commemorate. For the generations to come, you shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance." Here ends the first lesson. In our second lesson, by the time Paul was establishing congregations, he had begun to share with them and to teach them some of the rituals and traditions that had been part of the early church. One of them was the sacrament of Holy Communion, which was for them based on the Passover meal. In the prophet Jeremiah, we read that a day of a new covenant was coming. And so it was that when Jesus shared Passover with his disciples on the night he died, he lifted up the cup of redemption and said, "This is the cup of the new covenant." The very same words we use in our communion liturgy. And so Paul shares that with a congregation that he established in the Greek city of Corinth. Our second lesson is from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 11, verses 23 to 26. St. Paul writes, "For I received from the Lord what I also passed on to you. How the Lord Jesus Christ, on the night he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, 'This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it, in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes.'" Here ends our second lesson. Commentary on the gospel lesson will be reserved until the sermon. So please rise for the good news of the gospel. This is the gospel according to John, the 13th chapter, beginning at the first verse. Glory to you, O Lord. It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served And the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Simon Peter replied, "Then, Lord, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "A person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that is why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightfully so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set for you an example, that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth, that no one is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." When Judas had gone, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself, and will glorify him at once. My little children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me. And just as I told the Jews, so I tell you now. Where I am going, you cannot come. A new commandment I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Please be seated and we'll sing hymn number 109.